4 years ago, I was sitting on the top bunk in a prison dormitory, and I had this sort of epiphany. I was a slave. That's exactly what you are when you're incarcerated. You are a slave. You can't just get up and leave the property. There's men in towers with rifles watching you at all times to make sure you don't leave, and they will kill you if you try. You eat what you're given when you're given it. If you break the rules, you get punished, sometimes with physical force. You wake up when you're told. You sleep when you're told. You shower when you're told. And you work for free. You're a slave. Slaves have no control over themselves. Someone else has control over them. That's obvious. But how do you become a slave in the first place? Well, a common form of slavery is indentured servitude. That's what happens when you borrow money and accumulate a great big debt. Then, when you can't pay it back, you got to work it off. And this is why, in our own way, we're all a bunch of convicts. Have you ever considered why it is that after someone gets out of prison, they say things like, "I paid my debt to society"? That's how they got there, and we all understand it. If you take good from society, but you don't give good back to society, you owe society a debt, and you will work it off. But it's a beautiful thing to experience hard times. Hebrews 12 says, "In your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood." And have you completely forgotten this word of encouragement that addresses you as a father addresses his son? It says, "My son, do not make light of the Lord's discipline, and do not lose heart when he rebukes you, because the Lord disciplines the one he loves, and he chastens everyone he accepts as his son. Endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as his children. For what children are not disciplined by their father? If you're not disciplined, and everyone undergoes discipline, then you're not legitimate, not true sons and daughters at all. Moreover, we have all had human fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them for it. How much more should we submit to the Father of spirits and live? They disciplined us for a little while as they thought best, but God disciplines us for our good, in order that we may share in his holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. It's a good thing to be disciplined. Discipline is control. It teaches you to control yourself. If you control yourself, you're free. But if you don't control yourself, the thing that controls you is your slave master. God desires your freedom. Freedom from slavery to the law, and freedom from slavery to sin, which is, at the end of the day, the same thing. 1 Timothy says, "We know that the law is good, if one uses it properly. We also know that the law is made not for the righteous, but for lawbreakers and rebels, the ungodly and sinful, the unholy and irreligious, for those who kill their fathers or mothers, for murderers, for the sexually immoral, for those practicing homosexuality, for slave traders and liars and perjurers, and for whatever else is contrary to the sound doctrine." Sinful men deserve the punishment that the law requires for sin. The problem is that a lot of sinful men believe they're not sinful men. But the Bible says, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. When I was sitting there on my rack in prison, thinking about slavery, I never once thought I deserved to be a slave. I was set up. Someone I thought was my friend asked me to help him get some cocaine. And I got it for him. I did him a favor. He was wired up. This happened twice. I got 2 counts of distribution of cocaine. But I didn't even make a profit from it. It was just a party favor. I wasn't a drug dealer. I just graduated from college. Excuse after excuse. I wouldn't take any responsibility for my actions. I mean, never mind all those times I blew all my money on drugs, went and got an 8-ball from Rico and flipped it so I could get some more. I didn't get caught for that. I was set up. It's funny. I spent a year in prison, and I don't remember meeting one guilty man the whole time. Back to Hebrews. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. Now, here's the problem. If you think you didn't do anything wrong, when you experience hard times, you won't be trained by them. You'll be like the kid who's got crumbs on his shirt and chocolate on his lips, saying, "I didn't steal any cookies." His dad gives him a whooping and says, "Tell the truth. You stole the cookie." He makes his little mad face. "I didn't steal no cookies." All right, you're grounded. Go to your room. Nobody wants to hear excuses and lies, especially a parent. But if you realize you did wrong, and you know you deserve punishment, and you come crying, begging, "Please, Daddy, forgive me. I'm sorry. I won't do it again." Well, now, that's a kid whose parent might just give him a hug and say, "It's okay. Go on now. Don't do it again." That's grace. That's what difficulty in life is for. You go through it because God loves you. This is your spanking. You've got two ways to respond to it. You can get angry, say, "I don't deserve this," and double down, get a worse punishment. Or you can humble yourselves, cry out to God, "Father, forgive me, I'm a sinner." These are your two options: pride or humility, denial or confession, punishment or freedom. That's it. You know, a lot of people will come preaching to you, and that will be the end of it. They'll say, "If you want to choose freedom, say this prayer with me. Jesus, I know I'm a sinner, but I want to change. I ask you to come live in my heart." Then they'll say, "If you said that prayer and meant it, congratulations. You're now a child of God. Welcome to the kingdom." And you'll say, "Really? Sweet." And then it's off to steal more cookies from the cookie jar. That's not salvation. That makes them feel good. It makes you feel good. And it saves nobody. That right there is the reason people think Christianity is a joke. But that's not Christianity. It's prison religion. Everyone knows John 3:16. "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish but have everlasting life." But did you know Jesus keeps talking after that? Check this out. "For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. Whoever believes in him is not condemned, but whoever does not believe stands condemned already, because they have not believed in the name of God's one and only Son. This is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but people love darkness instead of light, because their deeds were evil. Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. But whoever lives by the truth comes into the light, so that it may be seen plainly that what they have done has been done in the sight of God." If you believe Jesus, you'll do what Jesus said. And what Jesus said is that you can't just keep living how you're living. You have to change. John 5. Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Now, there is in Jerusalem, near the sheep gate, a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Here, a great number of disabled people used to lie: the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." Then Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat and walk." At once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. The story doesn't just end there. Jesus doesn't just heal the man. He tells him, "See, you are well again. Stop sinning, or something worse may happen to you." John 8. At dawn, he appeared again in the temple courts, where all the people gathered around him, and he sat down to teach them. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery. They made her stand before the group and said to Jesus, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now, what do you say?" They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. But Jesus bent down and started to write on the ground with his finger. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." Again, he stooped down and wrote on the ground. At this, those who heard began to go away, one at a time, the older ones first, until only Jesus was left, with the woman still standing there. Jesus straightened up and asked her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" "No one, sir," she said. "Then neither do I condemn you," Jesus declared. That's what everybody remembers when they think of the story. But Jesus didn't just forgive her and save her life. He sends her away with a message. Go now and leave your life of sin. When I sat on my rack thinking about my slavery, the thing I missed was this. I was a slave to sin before I was a slave to the law. I was a slave to sin before I owed a debt to society. If I hadn't been a slave to sin, I wouldn't have owed a debt to society. But I was a slave to sin because I had no self-control. So what is self-control? Self-control is discipline. And discipline is hard. It's never easy. Somebody who's disciplined doesn't try to gratify every desire they have because they know that in the future, things will go bad for them. Instead, they do the hard thing, denying what they desire in the moment for a better future. The Olympics are held every 4 years. We all recognize how important they are now. But do you know how long they've been around? Since like 1300 BC. That's about 3,300 years. And here's a fun fact. In ancient Greece, the 4-year interval between Olympic Games was called an Olympiad. And they didn't measure time by years, they measured it by Olympiads. That's how important the Olympics were. Now, Paul, the apostle, in a letter to the Corinthians, mentions the Olympic races. And you know, the Corinthians were from Corinth, a major Greek city. They had a very high view of the Olympic races. Let's take a look at what he had to say. Do you not know that in a race, all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Therefore, I don't run like someone running aimlessly. I don't fight like a boxer beating the air. No, I strike a blow to my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize. Do you understand that you and your body have a master-slave relationship? Your body desires sinful things, which is to say, it desires to enslave you. But if you resist, you're the master. That's when you have self-control. Jesus says, "Very truly I tell you, everyone who sins is a slave to sin." Now, a slave has no permanent place in the family, but a son belongs to it forever. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. When Jesus sets you free, you'll know it, because you will begin to see sin as utterly sinful. You'll hate it. You'll do anything to escape it. That's the moment your race begins. But it doesn't end there. It goes on until this life comes to an end. That's the finish line. So let's look back at what Paul said. Do you not know that in a race, all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Who gets the gold medal in a race? Is it not the person who comes in first place? Mark. Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. Teacher, they said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. What do you want me to do for you? He asked. They replied, let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory. You don't know what you're asking, Jesus said. Can you drink the cup I drink, or be baptized with the baptism I'm baptized with? We can, they answered. Jesus said to them, you will drink the cup I drink, and be baptized with the baptism I'm baptized with. But to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared. When the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. Jesus called them together and said, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. You must, like Christ, give your life as a ransom for many. You have to neglect your own desires and serve others. This is how you get the prize, and this is how you know you're running the race. But if you're not doing that, you're not running the race at all. You're kidding yourself. James, the brother of Jesus, says, do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like someone who looks at his face in a mirror and, after looking at himself, goes away and immediately forgets what he looks like. But whoever looks intently into the perfect law that gives freedom and continues in it, not forgetting what they have heard but doing it, they will be blessed in what they do. So what did Jesus say to do? How do we become a slave of all so that we will come in first and win the prize? Quote, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, you shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. How many people will say, I don't need all that church stuff. I'm a pretty good guy. I mean, it's not like I've killed anybody or anything, but that's not enough. You need to love. You need to go so far as to resist even being angry. You need to die to yourself and be raised in Christ, extending a pardon to those who wrong you. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, is answerable to the court, and anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. How carelessly we curse men made in the image of God. With what ease we say, man, I really hate those Democrats, those Republicans. What idiots. How could they be so stupid? Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First, go and be reconciled to them. Then come and offer your gift. Do you see that God desires peace, reconciliation, love, and communion? So much so, in fact, that he has absolutely no use for anything you have to offer until you're willing to humble yourself and pursue such things. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. Look, it's a hard message, but it's a beautiful message. When you have a husband or a wife, you want them to be fully dedicated to you. loyal to you in everything. You don't want faithfulness sometimes. You want it all the time, in everything. That's how Christ treats us, and it's what he expects in return. Quote, enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate, and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. Of all the people who train for the Olympics, only one every 4 years wins the prize. You better run your race in such a way as to win the prize. If you take anything away from this message, let it be this: whoever wants to be first among you must be slave to all. It's all about humility. It's about service. I don't have any special prayer for you, but Jesus does. To some who were confident of their own righteousness and looked down on everyone else, Jesus told this parable. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee, the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed, God, I thank you that I'm not like other people, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even this tax collector. I fast twice a week and give 1/10 of all I get. But the tax collector stood at a distance. He would not even look up to heaven, but beat his breast and said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I tell you that this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted.